Welcome back. This is your Story Corner, the podcast. Designed and created specifically to help you relax and unwind, to work through any anxieties, to remind you to breathe deeply. And hopefully, as you do so, let go of the day and unwind and settle, hopefully, for a good night's sleep. Wherever you are, whoever you are welcome here. And we are so glad you have found our podcast. We're here to remind you that you are not alone. And no matter whatever is going on in the world or in your life right now, remember, it will pass. Whatever it is, it's going to pass. And you are going to be okay. You're gonna be okay. Welcome back to our podcast, which has been on a little hiatus these last few months. But don't worry, in the new year we will be returning with a selection of your favorite bedtime stories. In the meantime, it is that time of year once again. One of my personal favorite times, Christmas. So, no matter where you are and how you celebrate, I hope you are warm and safe, because this is the first of 2 Christmas Story Corner podcasts. On this podcast, we're going to read 2 of my absolute favorite short Christmas stories. First up will be The Elves and the Shoemaker, a small and classically formed, much like the elves themselves and the shoes they make, little story that all takes place one magical Christmas Eve. The second, of course, is The Night Before Christmas. So, I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are able to relax and unwind and enjoy as you deserve. As it is Christmas, a reminder, you can find us on TikTok live all this Christmas week. It starts off on Sunday night with some Christmas Harry Potter bedtime stories from 10 p.m. UK time. Then, on Monday the 23rd, we finish reading A Christmas Carol, which may give you a little hint of the second part of this special Christmas podcast coming your way. Then join us live on Christmas Eve as we read some of your favourite Christmas stories. You may have to look out for that mean Mr. Grinch. We'll be live on Christmas Eve. Make sure you're following our Instagram page and our TikTok pages and set your notifications to all to know when we come live. We'll be live also on Christmas Day and the day after Christmas Day. Here in the United Kingdom and some parts of Europe, it is called Boxing Day. So, we'll be with you, keeping you company, reminding you of your worth this Christmas season. It's very important to know at this time of year that you are not alone, and it is okay not to be okay. Even though it is a wonderful season by design, it can be, of course, a very stressful time, a very busy time. And for whatever reason, you may find yourself on your own. But that's okay. I can tell you, I've had many Christmases on my own, but I've also had many Christmases surrounded by many people, but also felt alone. The trick is to keep working on your self-worth. You can have your own Christmas how you want it. So remember that. And remember, you are not alone. There are people out there in this incredible world. I like to call them angels among us, who work at various institutions, charities, who are ready to listen to you if you need. So make sure you reach out. I know some of those people personally, and they're some of the greatest people you will ever meet. And you know the best quality of all? They listen. So, a little gentle reminder this year. It'll be okay. You'll get through it. And it's okay to have a mince pie. But it's also okay not to have a mince pie. So, but remember, we'll be always with you all through this Christmas season. Make sure you're with us. You never know when Cinnamon or Kermit will pop up live on TikTok. Now, to the first of our 2 short stories tonight. This is a story we often read on Yourstorycorner. You can't beat a good fairy tale story, especially at this time of year. A lot of fairy tales get turned into pantomimes, which here in the United Kingdom is a bit of a Christmas tradition. From Aladdin to Cinderella to Robin Hood to many, many more. It is often a young person's first introduction to live theatre. Lots of slapstick humour, lots of good upbeat musicals, numbers, audience participation, lots of "he's behind you." And a lot of classic stories come to life, and often is a lot of fun for all the family. One that hasn't translated much into a pantomime of yet is one of my favourites. It's called The Elves and the Shoemaker. So now I just need to know if you're sitting comfortably. Good. If you can, while you're listening to me read to you this bedtime story, just practice your mindfulness and your breathing. Remember what we talk about on the lives, especially box breathing, where you breathe in for 4, if you can, or 3 or 2, and then you hold your breath, and then you let go of your breath, and then you breathe in. And every time you do that, you draw a line, either in your mind or with your hand up in the air, or you can draw one on a piece of paper. So you breathe in for 4, draw a line, hold for 4, draw a line, breathe out for 4, draw a line, and breathe in. Draw a line, and you've completed 1 box, and then you keep going, and you draw as many boxes as you can. And if you can't hold your breath for 4, that's okay. Start with 2. Breathe in for 2, hold for 2. Breathe out for 2, breathe in for 2. Just remember to draw the lines of the box. How many boxes can you make tonight? And when I'm reading to you this story, I want you to close your eyes. And as you're closing your eyes, listen carefully to every word I say and paint the pictures of the story and bring them to life in your mind. Enjoy. This is your Story Corner, the podcast, Christmas special, episode 1. The Elves and the Shoemaker. Once upon a time, there was a poor shoemaker who had only enough leather left to make 1 pair of shoes. He had no money to buy more, and so he cut out the pattern pieces for the shoes he wished to make, and put them aside until the morning. The shoemaker lifted the candle stub that he had been working by, and trudged wearily up the stairs to the little rooms he shared with his wife above the workshop. The next morning, the shoemaker opened the door to his workshop and gasped in surprise. There on the table was a pair of fine shoes made from the leather that he had left out. The shoemaker picked them up to take a closer look and could not find a single fault. They were perfectly made. At that very moment, the bell above the door of the workshop jingled, and a customer walked in. She urgently needed a new pair of shoes, and when she saw the ones in the shoemaker's hands, knew she had found just the pair. The shoes were sold in a flash, and with the money he had made, the shoemaker bought enough leather to make 2 more pairs. He cut the pattern pieces out that evening and went up to bed for a good night's rest. The next morning, the shoemaker returned to his workshop, feeling very refreshed. He was ready to work, but the 2 pairs of shoes had already been made overnight. The shoemaker had nothing else to do but sell the beautiful shoes, and this was quickly done. This left him enough money to buy leather and more leather for more pairs. Once more, the following morning, 4 pairs of ready-made shoes sat on his workshop counter. These strange events continued until eventually the shoemaker was no longer poor, and customers came from far and wide to buy shoes from his workshop. One night, just before Christmas, that magical night, Christmas Eve, the shoemaker made up his mind to find out who had been helping him. He and his wife hid behind a curtain leading to the workshop area and waited. As the clock struck midnight, 2 little elves ran into the room, wearing not even a scrap of clothing between them. They clambered onto the counter and set to work making shoes. The shoemaker was amazed at just how well the little elves stitched and hammered. He could not believe how quickly they completed all the work before they skipped off into the darkness. The shoemaker's wife looked at him and said, "Oh, we must show the elves how much we appreciate everything they have done for us. I know, I will make them both a little outfit with hats and jackets to keep them warm this Christmas." The shoemaker nodded in agreement and said, "Yes, and I will make a perfect little pair of shoes for them both to wear proudly on Christmas Day." And so they worked through Christmas Eve into Christmas morning. And when the shoemaker and his wife had finished, they laid everything out on the workshop counter instead of any cut out pattern pieces. They hid behind the curtain again and waited to see what would happen. As the clock struck 12, the little elves ran in and discovered their brand new sets of Christmas clothes. They laughed and hugged each other in excitement. They dressed themselves quick as a flash, and danced and skipped across the counter and out of the door. The elves were never to be seen again, but the shoemaker's business continued to be a great success that Christmas and all the years and many Christmases to come. And they all lived happily ever after. And that, of course, was The Elves and the Shoemaker, one of my all-time favourite stories, and perfect for Christmas. Welcome. This is your Story Corner. This is the first of our 2 Christmas special podcasts. As a reminder, we will be back in the new year with a brand new podcast series with more books and more famous faces, names, stories for you to picture as you drift off to sleep. Next up is a story we read at the end of every live on TikTok on your Christmas Story Corner. Originally published as an account of a visit from St. Nicholas, this famous poem is often known today as The Night Before Christmas. It first appeared on December the 23rd in the year 1823. It appeared in a newspaper called the Troy Sentinel. It was printed between an article about removing honey from a beehive and a marriage announcement, if you believe. In the original version, the author referred to 2 of the reindeer by their Dutch names, Dunder and Bliksem. In a later version, he changed their names to Donder and Blitzen. How many of the reindeer can you name right now off the top of your head? And don't forget Rudolph. The poem has since then been reproduced throughout the world, set to music, performed as a play, even made into a silent film. This version I'm about to read you follows the wording of the version first printed all those years ago in the Troy Sentinel. Clement Clark Moore taught Greek and Oriental literature at the General Theological Seminary in New York City. The story goes that he wrote the poem to share with his children eventually, and there were 9, would you believe, on Christmas Eve. A relative copied it down and gave it to a friend in Troy, New York, who in turn sent it to the Troy Sentinel newspaper. Now originally, the newspaper did not credit Moore as the poet, and Moore was just as glad. He was a little embarrassed by the poem's popularity. In fact, referring to it as a mere trifle. Because it became so wildly known, however, he finally stepped forward as the author and included it in a book of his own poems, the New York Book of Poetry, published in 1837. On October the 26th, in the year 2000, An article appeared in the New York Times that questioned the identity of the poem's author. A professor at Vassar College, Don Foster, argued that the spirit and style of the poem was more in keeping with the verse of Henry Livingston Jr., who also lived in New York in the 1800s. Since no one has ever found a signed, handwritten copy of the original poem, it is impossible to prove Foster's claim. No matter who wrote the poem, however, it has become an American classic, one that is told all around the world. Its familiar words warm the hearts of thousands of people every year at Christmas time. Amazing to think there is a little magical mystery around this incredible piece of work. So now, I just need to know if you're ready. Perfect to listen to this, especially on Christmas Eve. So, if we have some little people listening, now is the time to snuggle up. I'm sure by now you've hung your stockings with care, and I'm sure you've left out a plate. Have you? Let's see, what do we need to remember? A mince pie or a biscuit? Oh, and some carrots for the reindeers. Rudolph, of course, who, even though Rudolph does not appear in this story, he is there, as always, leading the way. So if you've done all that, what else is there to remember? Oh, I know, a nice glass of milk, or something that you think is a good idea to leave for Father Christmas. Have you done all that? Oh, good. Well, as you know, Father Christmas cannot appear until you're fast asleep. That is the magical part about Christmas, for he knows if you are still awake. So, hopefully by listening to this story, you soon will be fast asleep. And I'm sure, 'cause you've been so wonderful and good and kind, and you will do that all next year too, then I think it's time to listen to a bedtime story and snuggle in for a good night's sleep. And that goes for mummies and daddies and guardians and grandparents and foster families and anybody else who looks after you. So, here we go. This is The Night Before Christmas by Clement Clark Moore. Or maybe not. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. Children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the lustre of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver, so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled, and he shouted, and he called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, On, Cupid, on thunder and bliksem, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was all dressed in fur, from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys was flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. A stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, and turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprung to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." And that, of course, was the night before Christmas. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you're not quite ready to go to sleep, and maybe you're just too excited still, you can listen to it again and again, and maybe read along. And read it along, and then close your eyes and imagine Father Christmas traveling around the world. It's a nice thought. Well, I hope you enjoyed the first of this 2-part Christmas special podcast. Look out for the second part coming very soon, just in time for Christmas Eve. And don't forget to join us all this Christmas live on TikTok. If you're not already following us there, you can find us on TikTok by searching Your Christmas Story Corner. You can also find us on our website, Yourstorycorner.com. We also have a YouTube channel, which you may be listening to the story from. All the links are on our website, including our Instagram, which we always post on when a new podcast goes live, and also when we are live on TikTok. And we love hearing from you. You have the ability to do so if you're listening to this podcast on some of the providers we are on. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and so much more. Well, until next time, I hope you are feeling warm and cozy. Remember, you are not alone. And no matter whatever is going on in the world and in your life right now, it will pass. It's going to pass. And you are going to be okay. You're gonna be okay. Good night, sleep tight, and I'll see you soon for another Story Corner.